Assalamu alaikum, brothers and sisters. I want to just briefly tell you, I'm sometimes asked, how come you're a Muslim? And I tell them, well, God showed me that I'm a Muslim. For the first 35 years of my life, I was a disbeliever. I knew there is no God, I didn't see any need for God, and I didn't believe in God. Ever since I was small, I was interested in science. And as my knowledge of science grew, 25 years ago, in basically a flash, I came to the conclusion that the universe is so perfectly made and everything so perfectly matches together that there must be God. So in 1 second I went from certainty there is no God to certainty there must be God and only one God. So I accepted there is God. I said, Ashhadu alla ilaha illallah. But I was not looking for a religion. I thought all religions are wrong. Christians say this is one. The Jews said, Jews are chosen people, and if you're not Jew, you're not chosen. And about Islam, I only had negative information. But I didn't want to stay ignorant about religions. So I said, okay, I read Bible. And I saw in the Bible there are places which you know come from God. You feel it in your heart. But you see there are places which come from man. Because this page says something that is opposite to the thing that was said a few pages ago. So I knew that Bible was written by man many years after the prophets. And I bought a Coran, English translation of the Coran. And when I started reading it with the same idea that just like Bible, it was written by man. Only in this case we know the name of the man, Muhammad. And then when I was maybe about 1/3 in Quran, I remember telling my wife, you know, this Muhammad, he must have been a very smart, very intelligent man, because this book is very clear, very logical, very easy to follow, and there are no contradictions. But then as I read later, I suddenly saw a scientific fact which I knew was only discovered in the 20th century. So immediately I saw that Muhammad is not the author of the Quran. That Muhammad is a messenger sent by God to give the Quran to mankind. So I saw, MashaAllah, Muhammad Rasulullah. So I said, MashaAllah, I'm a Muslim.
ثم قال ما شاء الله أنا مسلم أصبح مسلما بتلاوته للشهادة.
And people ask me, well, how did you react? You said you heard bad things about Muslims, you didn't know anything about Islam. How did you react? Did you want to be Muslim? And I said, I had no choice. Because when I was born, I was a baby. I didn't know I'm different from my mother. Then a little bit later, I knew my mother is somebody else, and when she's gone, I cried because I was afraid she's gone. But I still didn't know what I am. And then one day, I suddenly start, MashaAllah, I'm a boy. And nobody asked me, what did you do? Did you want to be a boy? No, because we know we don't have a choice. God makes us this. So, MashaAllah, that was the greatest blessing on my wife, of my life. I have wonderful family, I have wonderful children, wife, everything. But the greatest blessing was that God showed me His guidance. And when I pray, I make dua, God, please let me die as a believer. Let me never disbelieve again. A little while ago, I heard somebody here who was concerned that maybe the signs that are discovered in the Quran may be wrong. We should have a committee to see if the signs are right. God says in the Quran, we demonstrate our miracles to those who attain certainty. So my answer is, when you have strong iman and you have knowledge of the scientific facts, When you see it in the Quran, you don't have to worry, is it right or is it wrong? It will jump out at you, it will hit you. And you will say, MashaAllah, this is a sign from God. And you want to make sajda because you feel very humble. Because you know this is the truth. There is no false signs, no wrong signs, because this book is from God and He doesn't make any mistakes.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والسماء والطارق وما أدراك ما الطارق النجم الثاقب إن كل نفس لما عليها حافظ فلينظر الإنسان مما خلق من ماء دافق يخرج من بين الصلب والترائب إنه على رجعه لقادر يوم تبلى السرائر فما له من قوة ولا ناصر والسماء ذات الرجع والأرض ذات الصدع إنه لقول فصل وما هو بالهزل إنهم يكيدون كيدا وأكيد كيدا فمهل الكافرين أمهلهم رويدا.
The statements we're about to show you are from the Holy Quran and is said to be the official, unchanged, pure word of God, revealed over 1400 years ago. Claiming to be the word of God is a heavy statement, and without proof, or if a single contradiction is found within the book, the apparent word of God will be proven false. So without further ado, let's put the book to the test. In the 23rd chapter, titled The Believers, from the 12th to the 14th verses, God is said to give a detailed description of how the human being is formed. It begins by saying, "We then placed him as a sperm drop in a place of settlement, firmly fixed. Then we made the drop into a alaqa." We will translate this word very soon. "And then we changed the alaqa into a lump. Then we made out of that lump into bones. And then we clothed the bones with flesh. Then we caused him to grow and come into being and attain the definitive human form." In the 21st century, we can now safely say that this verse is clearly describing the process of human development in correct chronological order. However, what we should be paying attention to in particular is the second stage, referring to the development of the embryo. The specific word used to describe the embryo in this verse is the word alaqa. The word alaqa, when translated into English, can mean three separate things. Firstly, a blood clot, or to be suspended, that is to be hanging or clinging to something, or thirdly and finally, a leech. Now, all three definitions don't come anywhere near what we perceive to be the human embryo. So, why are these words used, and what significance do they share with the human embryo? Can the embryo be described as a blood clot? Well, what do you think? In the third week of embryonic development, a tubular heart joins with the blood vessels to form a primordial cardiovascular system, and by the end of the third week, the blood is circulating and the heart begins to beat on day 21. The first thing that comes to mind in regards to being suspended or hanging is the umbilical cord. But we can't use that example because we are simply referring to step 2, before the baby has even formed. But we now know today that the umbilical cord is formed from the connecting stalk. And the connecting stalk is formed as soon as the embryo is formed. The embryo's connecting stalk has even been described by John Allen and Beverly Kramer as an object to suspend the developing embryo in the extra-embryonic column. So an embryo is suspended and does have a strong resemblance with a blood clot. What on earth would an embryo have to do with a leech? Figure A shows the structure of an embryo at 25 days. Figure B shows a leech. Now please note once again that the embryo in this stage is no greater than the size of a kernel of wheat. This is an X-ray of the embryo at 22 days. This is the internal structure of a leech. It's mind-blowing stuff, but you still haven't seen anything yet. This is the head of the embryo at 22 days. The detail you are seeing right now is absolutely impossible to be seen with the human eye and can only be seen with a microscope. This is the back end of a leech. There's no other words used to describe this other than mind-blowing. The pictures we have shown you are impossible to be seen with the human eye or even to be predicted by the human mind. Once again, the verses we have shown you were revealed over 1400 years ago to a man who couldn't read nor write. Are these the words of God?
Descriptions of the human embryo in the Coran cannot be based on scientific knowledge in the 7th century. The only reasonable conclusion is that these descriptions were revealed to Muhammad from God, from God, from God, from God, from God, from God.
اقرأ أخيا ورتل القرآن اسمع بصوتك اسمع الأكوان اقرأ كلام الله.
L'empreinte digitale, qui est la configuration visible que la peau prend sur le bout du doigt, est absolument unique. Chaque personne vivant sur Terre a des empreintes digitales uniques. C'est pourquoi l'empreinte digitale est reconnue comme étant une sorte de carte d'identité très importante, et elle est largement utilisée dans ce sens sur Terre. En 1880, Henry Folds, un scientifique anglais, a souligné dans un article édité dans Nature que les empreintes digitales des gens ne subissaient aucun changement durant toute leur vie. Ainsi, les suspects pouvaient être reconnus coupables grâce aux empreintes digitales qu'ils laissaient sur des surfaces telles que le verre. Depuis, les empreintes digitales sont devenues une méthode importante d'identification. Cependant, avant le 19e siècle, il est clair que personne n'avait jamais pensé au fait que la forme onduleuse du bout des doigts ait eu une quelconque signification. Alors qu'au 7e siècle déjà, le Coran a précisé que le bout des doigts des êtres humains comportait une caractéristique importante.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. La uqsimu biyawmil qiyamah wa la uqsimu bin nafsil lawwamah. أيحسب الإنسان أن لن نجمع عظامه بلى قادرين على أن نسوي بنانه.
Toujours pas convaincu? À suivre, Inch'Allah. والسلام على من تبع الهدى.
قام الطبيب الفرنسي موريس بوكاي بالكشف على جثة فرعون، وقال: لأول مرة في التاريخ نعلم أن صاحب هذه الجثة مات غرقا وتكسرت أضلاعه تحت الماء ونجا بمعجزة، وبعد ذلك تم تحنيطه وحفظه إلى يومنا هذا. فأخبره أحد المسلمين أن هذه الحقيقة ذكرت في القرآن في قوله تعالى:
وجاوزنا ببني إسرائيل البحر فأتبعهم فرعون وجنوده بغيا وعدوا حتى إذا أدركه الغرق قال آمنت أنه لا إله إلا الذي آمنت به بنو إسرائيل وأنا من المسلمين. الآن وقد عصيت قبل وكنت من المفسدين فاليوم ننجيك ببدنك لتكون لمن خلفك آية وإن كثيرا من الناس عن آياتنا لغافلون.
فبدأ العالم الفرنسي دراسة الإسلام، وعندما علم أن الإسلام هو الدين الحق قال: أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأن محمدا رسول الله.
إن الله لا يستحيي أن يضرب مثلا ما بعوضة فما فوقها فأما الذين آمنوا فيعلمون أنه الحق من ربهم.
في خلق السماوات والأرض واختلاف الليل والنهار لآيات لأولي الألباب. أيها الإخوة الكرام، كلمة تشير إلى مخلوق من أهون المخلوقات على الإنسان، إنها البعوضة. إن الله لا يستحيي أن يضرب مثلا ما بعوضة. البعوضة بعد اكتشاف المجهر الإلكتروني تبين أن في رأسها 100 عين، وفي فمها 48 سنا، وفي صدرها قلوب 3، قلب مركزي وقلب لكل جناح، وفي كل قلب أذينان وبطينان ودسامان. وزن البعوضة 1 على 1000 من الغرام. الغرام لا وزن له، والبعوضة وزن 1 على 1000. تبين أن هذه البعوضة تملك جهازا لا تملكه الطائرات، تملك جهاز استقبال حراري. هي ترى الأشياء لا بأشكالها ولا بألوانها ولا بأحجامها، إنما ترى الأشياء بحرارتها. حساسية هذا الجهاز 1 على 1000 من الدرجة المئوية. تملك جهاز لتحليل الدم، ما كل دم يناسبها، تفحص الدم ثم تمتص الدم. لذلك ينام أخوان على السرير، الأول ملئ بلسع البعوض والثاني لم يصب بشيء. تملك جهاز تمييع للدم، لأن دم الإنسان أحيانا سمج لا يسري في خرطومها، تميعه كي تمتصه. قلت أحيانا. نعم. تملك جهاز للتخدير، لئلا تقتل أثناء الامتصاص، تخدر ثم تمتص الدم وتطير إلى سماء الغرفة. فلما ينتهي مفعول التخدير يشعر الإنسان باللسع فيضرب يده، هي تضحك عليه. تملك جهاز تحليل دم، جهاز تمييع، جهاز تخدير، في معها جهاز استقبال حراري رادار، في برأسها 100 عين، بفمها 48 سن، بصدرها 3 قلوب. أما خرطومها الذي هو كالشعرة فيه 6 سكاكين، 4 سكاكين لإحداث جرح مربع، وسكينان تلتئمان على شكل أنبوب لامتصاص الدم. أما أرجلها فيها مخالب إذا وقفت على سطح خشن، ومحاجم إذا وقفت على سطح أملس. الآن نقرأ قوله تعالى: إن الله لا يستحيي أن يضرب مثلا ما بعوضة فما فوقها. إعجاز القرآن الكريم شهادة الله للمؤمنين أن هذا القرآن كلامه، كما شهد للأنبياء السابقين بمعجزات حسية، لكن الأنبياء السابقون لأقوامهم فقط، أما النبي عليه الصلاة والسلام لكل البشر أجمعين. الإعجاز العلمي الآن أقوى مادة تقنع الطرف الآخر. العصر عصر العلم، حينما يرى حقيقة علمية اكتشفت حديثا والقرآن قبل 1400 عام أشار إليها، لا يملك إلا أن يخضع، ومئات العلماء الكبار أسلموا عن طريق الإعجاز العلمي. نعم، في الآفاق وفي أنفسهم. سنريهم سين للاستقبال، يعني القرآن نزل في وقت والآيات ظهرت بعد 1000 عام. طبعا الحديث عن الإعجاز يطول، هناك مئات الموضوعات الدقيقة جدا.
ويريكم آياته فأي آيات الله تنكرون.
Have you ever wondered why bees construct hexagonal honeycombs rather octagonal or pentagonal? Mathematicians were looking for the answer to this question, and they reached to an interesting conclusion. A hexagon is the most appropriate geometric form for the maximum use of a given area. None of the other shapes fit together perfectly to provide more usable area and consume less amount of wax for construction of a comb.
The bee's honeycomb is an amazing piece of engineering, but why have they evolved to produce this hexagonal pattern? Well, actually, they don't have too many choices. If you try to put pentagons together, for example, they just don't fit together nicely, or circles leave lots of little gaps. If they want to produce a network of regular shapes which fit together neatly, then you've really only got three options. You can do equilateral triangles, or you could do squares, or you can do the bee's hexagons. But why of those three does the bee choose the hexagons? Well, it turns out that the triangles actually use much more wax than any of the other shapes. Squares are a little better, but it's the hexagons which use the least amount of wax.
It's a solution that was only mathematically proven a few years ago.
So the bees use the most appropriate form possible. The method used in construction of honeycomb is also very amazing. Bees start the construction of the hive from 2 or 3 different places and weave the honeycomb simultaneously in 2 or 3 strings. They start from different places. The bees, great in number, construct identical hexagons and then weave the honeycomb by combining these together and meeting in the middle. The junction points of the hexagons are assembled so deftly that no defect can be found in the structure of honeycomb.
Look at this, it's perfect. Yeah. Hexagons here.
Yeah. It is amazing. And the hexagon is a very strong structure. It's an engineering wonder for sure.
While thinking about this extraordinary performance, we for sure have to admit the existence of a superior will that ordains these creatures. The evolutionists want to explain this achievement with the concept of instinct and try to present it as a simple attribute of the bee.
They've just done it for thousands and thousands of years. They were born to do it. They just instinctively know that this is the shape of their home.
If there's an instinct at work, and if the rule is applied over all bees and leads them to work in harmony while they are not informed of each other, then it means that there is an exalted wisdom that rules over all these tiny creatures. Or in other words, the creator of these tiny creatures inspired them with what they have to do. And this fact was declared in Quran 14 centuries ago.
وَأَوْحَى رَبُّكَ إِلَى النحل أن اتخذي من الجبال بيوتا ومن الشجر ومما يعرشون ثم كلي من كل الثمرات فاسلكي سبل ربك ذللا يخرج من بطونها شراب مختلف ألوانه فيه شفاء للناس إن في ذلك لآية لقوم يتفكرون.
Furthermore, the worker bees, those who gather pollen and make honey, are actually all females. The male bees do not make honey. This was only known recently. However, the mentioning verses pointed out to this fact 14 centuries ago. The Arabic words kulli, fasluki and butuneha are all in female forms, whereas the male forms of these words are kul, fasluk and butunehim. So by using the female moods of these words, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala informs us that the worker bees are the female ones. Moreover, these verses pointed to another recent discovery. Bees build their hives from their own wax. However, scientists just discovered bees that build their hive in wood and even in solid rock.
And your Lord inspired the bee. Set up hives in the mountains, and in the trees, and in what they construct.